Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 6, Political Brotherhoods, Anarchism, of the Brotherhood of Man by J.E. Richardson TK. Chapter 6, Political Brotherhoods 2, Anarchy. Anarchy is a form of brotherhood based on the political and social theory that all government is evil. In its broadest form, it demands absolute emancipation from all law, moral as well as economic and political, outside the individual. In its more practical form, anarchism is a variety of communalism, having from its ideal the formation of small autonomous communities, the members of which represent one another's individual independence, while they unite to resist outside aggression. At its best, it stands for a society made orderly by good manners rather than by law, in which each person is supposed to produce according to his power and receive according to his needs. At its worst, it stands for terroristic resistance of all present government and social order. From these various definitions, it seems evident that there are many different concepts of the term anarchism. It would not be fair to judge it at its best by what it has proven to be at its worst. In any view of it, there can be no doubt that it is founded upon the general concept that all government is an evil, and complete emancipation from all law is the ideal state of society. It would be a matter of intense interest to apply the principle of logic to these various concepts, both social and economic, as well as individual and political, and see where it would lead us. From the viewpoint of a brotherhood, it does not seem to offer anything but chaos. This is because the mind cannot conceive of any society in which each individual does whatever he pleases, without his doing many things that must inevitably clash and conflict with the things his neighbors desire to do. An illustration of how these individual interests clash, and of what these clashes lead to, may be found in the history of the Western United States during the time when men recognized no legal restraints nor obligations. The public domain was open to stock raisers. One man elected to raise cattle and his neighbor elected to raise sheep. But wherever the sheep grazed, they cut the grass too short that little was left for the cattle to feed upon. A sheep raiser and a cattle raiser both selected the same territory in which to feed their stock. When they turned both sheep and cattle on the same grazing land, the sheep soon ate the grass so short that the cattle were left without sufficient food. The first result was that the cattle grew thin while the sheep grew fat. The brothers did not happen to possess the good manners which anarchists are supposed to depend upon to keep out of trouble and preserve perfect order in the midst of all their conflicting interests. On the other hand, the cattle raiser, who was getting decidedly the worst of the deal, went to the sheep raiser and expostulated with him. The sheep raiser only laughed at him and replied, "This is a free country and this grazing is as much mine as yours." But the cattle raiser said, "Look at my cattle. They are getting thinner every day and slowly starving. Soon they will begin to die if you permit your sheep to graze over all the land, and I shall be ruined." The sheep raiser replied, "What has that to do with me? I am a sheep raiser, and I am doing fine. I am not raising cattle, and I have no interest in preventing your cattle from starving. That is your affair. I have as much right to graze my sheep on the public domain as you have your cattle, and that is just what I'm doing." You already know the outcome. The history of the West is the history of human strife with the sacrifice of human life on almost every section of land throughout the Western country. The cattle raiser finally served notice on the sheep raiser that if he did not relinquish part of the land, he would kill him on sight. They finally met in a duel to the death. They shot it out and one of them was killed. This is exactly what occurred not once, but thousands of times during the sheep and cattle wars of the past. In this country, when there was no law that could be enforced throughout the Western stock lands, because there were not sufficient government peace officers to patrol the territory and prevent the destructive wars. Here was a practical illustration of the actual working of the principle of the basis of anarchy. It proves that men do not possess the good manners on which anarchism depends as the only means of preventing disorders in society. It proves that whenever the interests and desires of men conflict, trouble, sorrow, destruction, and death reign supreme, until the majesty of the law comes and establishes its supremacy. Only then do men cease their hostile attitudes and seek to settle their conflicting interests by peaceful means, and it is only when the law is accompanied by the power to enforce it that men learn to respect it and acknowledge its benefits. In our present state of development, law is about the only influence in society that is strong enough and great enough to command the respect of mankind. Such good manners as mankind possesses today are not enough to preserve the peace alone for 1 hour without the restraining power of the law. If today the peaceful influences of the law were removed from society, it would not be long until the destructive impulses and tendencies of human nature would be openly flaunted on every hand, and good manners would be a thing of the past, from which it would seem that any social institution founded upon the emancipation of its individual members from the law as the ideal state has opened the floodgate of evil and destruction, by which it will work its destruction inevitably and speedily. Anarchism in every conceivable form and under every concept that has ever been defined has come down to us through every human error. Whenever it has been definitely inaugurated as the established social state, only social and political chaos has resulted. This is because the elements necessary to perpetuate a constructive brotherhood has been omitted. Hence, does it not seem that we are warranted in concluding that anarchism does not in any of its varied forms constitute the constructive basis necessary to the Brotherhood of Man, at least not in the present state of human development? Nor does it seem possible until several millenniums have come and gone, and humanity has attained to a much more exalted level of good manners. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating towards the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.